What's going on YouTube? Welcome to my channel. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. and if you're a fan of pro wrestling as much as I am, then you've come to the right channel. With Clash at the Castle now in the rearview mirror, we now move forward to the Money in the Bank Premium Live event, and being that it's one of my personal favorite events, given that there's ladder matches and opportunities extended out to those who might not have already been a champion, I thought what way of building anticipation and hype for the Premium Live event than by giving you guys my personal top 5 favorites in terms of who were my favorites of the Money in the Bank cash-ins. Now, given my list isn't the definitive list, by no means is it perfect, but it is my list based off of preference. So if you guys disagree or if you have a different preference in your top 5, please let me know down in the comments below who I left off or maybe the order in which I placed them. But before we jump into the list, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also follow the J Area podcast for more pro wrestling updates such as this one. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the list. Number 5, CM Punk, 2008. In 2008, CM Punk wasn't necessarily the CM Punk that we've grown to know today. He was relegated to the ECW brand and wasn't really seen as a main event star, but at WrestleMania 24, he would actually capitalize on his opportunity in the Money in the Bank match, therefore winning the contract and having a future title shot at his disposal. I think in this time period of the WWE, it wasn't really a commonplace for guys from Ring of Honor or from TNA Wrestling to come over and find success. They would always be relegated to the mid card and not really elevated to the top. So seeing a guy like CM Punk, who I grew up as one of my favorite pro wrestlers, not only because of his wrestling style, but because of his character, because of the look, everything that he was almost the anti-WWE establishment. He wasn't really your typical prototype that the WWE wanted to produce. So when they gave him the Money in the Bank briefcase, I thought, well, this is going to be a nice opportunity to see what they do with CM Punk. And obviously, he was drafted to Monday Night Raw not soon after. And then, on an episode of Monday Night Raw, the very first episode of Raw after the draft, we see Batista attack Edge, and Edge is laid out on the ground. And as Batista's making his way back towards to Gorilla, that is when CM Punk's music hits, and he now takes full advantage of his Money in the Bank briefcase. And it's very ironic in itself because Edge was the first individual to cash in Money in the Bank. He set the precedent of what that contract can do for a WWE superstar. So to see CM Punk do the very same thing that Edge did only 2 years prior, not only was it a great sense of irony, not only was it a great sense of storytelling, but it gave the opportunity to a young CM Punk as a World Heavyweight Champion. And say what you want about that title reign itself in 2008, but for me personally, that moment in time, seeing CM Punk, someone that I grew up a big fan of, and knowing that he wasn't the typical wrestler they wanted to push, and seeing him win that world title, it was amazing. It was one of the best moments I thought of the year, and to this day, it remains as one of my favorite Money in the Bank cash-ins. Number 4, Damian Priest, 2024. This one might be a little bit of a recency bias, but being that it was at WrestleMania 40, one of the biggest, if not the biggest WrestleMania of all time, I think it only elevates the cash-in itself, but also leading to it. For months on end, a lot of people were criticizing Damian Priest because of his lack of cash-in. They saw the opportunities there, and they thought in terms of logic, if I'm Damian Priest, this is when I would have cashed in. If I'm Damian Priest, I would have cashed in here. So there were months on months that many people were criticizing not only Damian Priest, but the booking by Triple H that led to this cash-in. The storyline that everyone was following was Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. So to see Drew McIntyre finally win the World Heavyweight Championship in front of a crowd, and then being cost that opportunity because of CM Punk, that only opened the doors for a Drew McIntyre to lose his title to Damian Priest. Given the year that Damian Priest had, he's always been a member of the Judgment Day, but there was a little shift of where he kind of became the leader. Obviously, he had won the tag team championships with Finn Balor, but to see all the years that he put in, not only in Ring of Honor, but on the independent circuit, in NXT, and now as the main roster, he wins the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 40, really putting a stamp on night 2, because if you remember, that was the way night 2 opens up, and it really set the stage for what that event was going to be remembered for. Very similar to CM Punk and his reign in 2008, say what you want about their reigns itself, but I'm going based off of the cash-in, and I thought what an awesome way to capitalize on the story that was being told not only by Punk and McIntyre, but also the anticipation and hype leading to a Damian Priest cash-in. Number 3, Dolph Ziggler, 2013. I'm old enough to remember when Dolph Ziggler first started off as a member of the Spirit Squad. Hell, I remember when he first started off as the caddy for Kerwin White, aka Chavo Guerrero. So to see the evolution, not only in terms of in-ring, but the evolution of in-character that we saw Dolph Ziggler go through, to see him go through the ups and downs of the mid-card. He did have a short main event feud with Edge over the World Heavyweight Championship in early 2011, but he never really got his foot in the door in terms of a perennial main event star. That changed in 2012 when he won the Money in the Bank briefcase. He would go on to have a memorable run as the Money in the Bank holder, having feuds with the likes of John Cena and Chris Jericho. But what really led to this Money in the Bank cash-in was because it was the night after WrestleMania 29, in the early stages of what we now know as the Raw after WrestleMania. I can remember the crowd erupting as they heard his music and as he made his way down to the ring to attack Alberto Del Rio and cash in. And what really became the beginning of a double turn, because if you remember, Dolph Ziggler was the heel heading into this storyline and Alberto Del Rio was the babyface. But because of the level of emotion, because of the crowd noise and the applause that came after him cashing in, this propelled Dolph Ziggler to be a babyface. I still think it's one of the best Money in the Bank cash-ins just on pure surprise factor and on crowd participation alone. I think Dolph Ziggler is an underrated talent, and it's a shame he didn't get as much of a run in the main event scene in WWE, but his Money in the Bank cash-in for me is at number 3. Number 2, Edge in 2006. Now you see, number 1 and number 2 really are a toss-up for me. Very difficult to distinguish the two because I think they are two of the standard bearers when it comes to Money in the Bank. But for me, it will always be high praise for the very first cash-in when Edge cashed in his contract at New Year's Revolution 2006. I can remember being a young, boy buying the pay-per-view event New Year's Revolution solely based on the Elimination Chamber itself. It would see John Cena defeat the likes of 5 other superstars in order to retain his WWE Championship, but we decided to stay long enough because the event wasn't over. You saw Mr. McMahon come out and emerge and say, "That was a great matchup, but the night is not over." He says this individual will be cashing in his Money in the Bank contract that he won at WrestleMania 21, and out comes the rated R superstar Edge, and the rest they say as history. Edge for me is the guy. He is the one you think of when you think of Money in the Bank, not only because he was the very first one, but you take a guy like Edge who wasn't a main event talent, not a perennial main event talent. He was always stuck in the mid card, but he had the talent, he had the ability to push through and become a main eventer. Fast forward years later, he's a Hall of Famer, he's a legend, and I feel like we can all pinpoint to this moment in 2006 when he first wins that WWE Championship, defeating the likes of John Cena and establishing himself as a champion and one of the all-time greats. And at number 1, Seth Rollins in 2015. I mean, they call it the heist of the century for a reason. We were going into WrestleMania 31 worried about the storyline, worried about the match that was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Not a lot of people were on board with it. Some people were getting tired of Brock Lesnar being this dominant champion. Others were getting tired of Roman Reigns being pushed down everyone's throat as the next big thing. But leading up to that, we saw that Seth Rollins was still the holder of the Money in the Bank contract. And what he did at WrestleMania 31, he did 2 historic things. 1, he was the very first individual to cash in at a WrestleMania, and 2, he was the first individual to cash in mid-match, therefore making it a triple threat match. Seth Rollins' moment at WrestleMania 31 really defines the reason why the main event could close out and determine what our own opinion and perception is of a WrestleMania. You want to make sure you close out on a high note. So to see Seth Rollins run down the ramp with his music blaring, with the Money in the Bank contract in tow, and cashing in, saving the main event essentially. I will say the match itself was fine, but that interjection of Seth Rollins really brought it up to an 11. So when you see him cash in on the likes of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, getting the pinfall, pinning Roman Reigns and becoming the new WWE Championship, I do remember looking at the top of the ramp and you have Seth Rollins holding the WWE title, swinging it around his head how he used to do back in the NXT days, and it really put a stamp on what WrestleMania 31 is remembered for. And for me, and that reason, that's why I have to put him at number 1 in terms of my personal favorite Money in the Bank cash-ins. But go ahead and let me know down in the comments, what are some of your favorite Money in the Bank cash-in moments? Who would you take off my list, and who would you add? For more videos, please consider subscribing to the channel as we continue to grow. With that being said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr., and I'll catch you guys in the next video.